I am Vero, and you're watching Modern Immigrant. Welcome everybody to a new episode of Modern Immigrant. As every Monday, I'm so happy that you're here and that you're about to learn and hear an amazing immigrant story. As every Monday, I would like to remind you that we have an Instagram account at Modern Immigrant where you can check out the work that we're doing, and you can also check out our website, modernimmigrant.net, where you're gonna find all of the other stuff that we are getting into, like our book club, our project Immigration is Good, and even our shop. So go ahead and check everything out. Remember that it's really important for us when you hit that button subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, I saw that a lot of the listeners are coming from Apple Podcasts, so that's super exciting. Thank you for tuning in. Remember that you can leave stars and a comment, a review, and the way I will get to know what are the things that you're enjoying about this podcast. Today I have the honor and the pleasure to bring this interview with Maja, with Juan or Maja. You're gonna get to know him today. He's an entrepreneur, he's a speaker, he's a student of UCLA. He has an amazing startup called Prepare, and he helps undocumented immigrants as himself find job opportunities in the US. He has amazing goals and an amazing vision, and you're gonna get to learn his experience, his journey as a migrant coming from Mexico to the USA. All of his life experiences are gonna blow your mind. He's dropping so many wisdom bombs in this episode that you wanna maybe even take notes. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. All the links to connect with Maja are down below, and to get to know about Prepare, his startup, he's also going to share about it in the podcast, but he's always welcome to receive DMs and messages from you guys, so you get to connect with him. That's the purpose of this podcast, so we can get together as a community. Remember that together we're always stronger. Thank you so much for being here. Enjoy this episode, and don't forget to share it with someone else if you liked it. So thank you. I want to take a quick little second to say thank you so much for all of the people that have been supporting the Modern Immigrant shop and that have been supporting immigrant causes throughout your purchases. Also, thank you so much to everyone that has been giving us cafecitos. That's the way to support this podcast, to support the production, so I can continue to make more episodes. So you can head to buymeacoffee.com/modernimmigrant. A little donation really gives us an amazing impact. So thank you for those cafecitos. Okay, so Juan, I'm today with Juan in Modern Immigrant. Welcome to Modern Immigrant. It's really exciting to have you here and to have the opportunity to talk to you and learn about the work you do. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful for being here, and thank you for this opportunity. First and foremost.
Yeah, this is great. Like, Juan sent me a few messages over Instagram, and I think with the first one, I was already like, yes, we need to have him over. The work that you're doing is wonderful. I was able to check out some of your accounts, and yeah. So why don't we start with the first question that I always ask, which is, how did your immigration journey start? And that way you can introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners.
Yeah, so my immigration journey started, I would say, in when I was really young. I was 3 years old. But I guess the only different thing about my story is that I actually had epilepsy when I immigrated here. So I had seizures, and so I'm originally from Mexico. Okay. Over there, when I was 2 years old, like, really, the story is not clear on how I ended up getting seizures, but from what my mom always tells me is that I was constantly in the hospital, that I was constantly, for a whole year, from 3 years old, I was in the hospital getting seizures every single day, like for the whole year. And it was a tough time in my life, because my mom said that she was always in the hospital. She said that the doctors in Mexico couldn't find any cure, they didn't know, they couldn't diagnose anything in my head, and they didn't know why I got this. But when I was like 3 years old, or transitioning to 3 years old, my family immigrated from Mexico to the US.
Mm.
Um, and even when we got here, I still had some seizures, but thankfully they didn't last any longer because of the medication I took here. So since 3, 4 years old, I haven't had any seizures, thankfully,
Oh,
gratefully.
that's good.
Uh, but yeah, I mean that's I always started off with that because I mean that's something that um it's very, I mean, it has definitely impacted my life, but like even now, I mean, I'm 21, but like even now, like I do research on like, okay, why do sometimes I have a hard time doing certain things or focusing, and then you know I'm a very curious person, so sometimes I look up different things and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like it makes sense a little bit, even though like a lot of people won't understand, but
Yeah. To start
that's
seeing like the reason why, and that is a good place where to start so we can understand a little bit on what you're gonna tell us. And I can imagine how hard that was for you and for your family, the fear of not knowing what was going on. And then it sounds like when you were able, so it sounds like you were able to find like the cure when you arrived to the US, like things got better. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, in the US it's been rough. Even though I grew up here, I struggled with English. I struggled with English. I struggled making friends, and I was put in like bilingual classes all throughout like my middle school and all throughout my elementary school and middle school. So yeah, but I mean it's been a roller coaster, I would say. I mean
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's a great way to describe an immigration journey, right? Like a roller coaster, because there's a lot of things. And I'm really glad that you're talking about the challenges, right? And you're mentioning the English and the making friends, because a lot of people will assume that because you arrived to the US when you were 3 years old, that everything was easy for you as an immigrant. And it doesn't sound like it had been.
It hasn't been. It hasn't been.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could talk about a little bit more about my story and who I am. And
totally.
and even but in elementary, I struggled to make friends. I struggled to sort of just get English, like just really be at that, like I couldn't pass the English learning aspect of English here. So I took bilingual classes, and then in middle school, it was actually one of the toughest times in my life, I would say, because for one, I was constant. So I went to two middle schools, surprisingly.
Okay,
In my sixth grade, it wasn't bad, but in my sixth grade, I went to a charter school close by where I lived. And I grew up in Koreatown in LA. So I live in LA now.
great. Okay.
Um, and I grew up in a low income community. Pretty much like that. At least my parents are are immigrants as well, and my dad works as a day laborer. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with what a day laborer is.
I would love if you can tell us.
Yeah, yeah. So a day laborer, a day, in the simplest way I can put it is, I'm not sure if you ever gone to like a Home Depot and there's certain people just waiting for jobs. So
Yeah.
that's what my dad does, and it's not very stable. It's not very safe because of the type of labor that they do.
Mm.
But essentially, it's called a day labor because they only do jobs for the day, and that's what my dad does. Um, but in middle school, in sixth grade, I went to a charter school, and I mean, I did get bullied in that charter school. But that wasn't like I didn't have much as a hard time making friends there because it was much smaller, and it was and I guess I didn't, I mean, I had some friends there, but in seventh grade, my mom my mom switched me to a public school, but it wasn't like an ordinary public school. And what I mean by that is that it was actually separated from boys and girls. So like boys were on the second floor, girls were on the third floor. And I guess like the philosophy of this middle school was, kids at this age are gonna get distracted with girls and they're not gonna learn. But that actually, really took a really bad toll on me because you know, because of the way I look, because of the way I spoke, because not getting English, I was constantly being bullied. And I'm
Mm.
sure a lot of people can sort of relate to this, but I hated going to school. I really did because for one, I couldn't speak proper English and people would make fun of me. But for two, like I had these kids that would constantly just like call me names, constantly, like really just say things that would really make me insecure as a human being. And at that time my mom would also work at a taco truck. So my mom would work from the evening to the night, my dad would work from the morning to the evening. So it was very difficult to sort of find that sense of security even at home. So like all throughout my time in middle school, I didn't tell nobody that like I was getting bullied in seventh grade. And and but it actually got to a point where these kids, like, they really really made me question life in general.
Mm.
And I'll tell you this story for full transparency. In seventh grade, I remember it very vividly. So it was a PE class, and I was in a class where all these kids would bully me, everybody in the class. And even though I had some friends, like, all these kids would bully me occasionally. And
Mm.
I remember one time we were playing soccer and I kicked the ball over the fence. And all I remember was 20 to 22 kids to 25 kids just look at me with anger and just looking at me because I kicked the ball over. And all I see is these kids rushing at me, like running at me. And I remember that day, like, I made a run for it. I was like, if I could just get to the locker room, I could close the door and everything will be good. These people ain't gonna do anything to me. But I was scared. So I begin running, and I start running. And then I fall down.
Wow.
And then I fall down. And when I fell down, all I could remember is all these kids just come to me, punch me everywhere, kick me in my head, kick me in my body, leave me all bruised. It was like one of the worst days of my life because, for one, I saw the kids that said were my friends kick me
Mm.
as well. And for two, I mean, I didn't have nobody. I remember that day I was just crying, and I've always been afraid of asking for help.
Mm.
But I remember that day I did do it. So I remember I went to a PE teacher and I was like, you know what? It's time I ask for help. And
Mm.
I remember I go to the PE teacher, and I'm all crying. I'm like bruised, right? And I tell him, this is what happened to me. And I knew he knew, but he was also a new teacher. And all he told me was, hey, listen, as long as you do not tell the principal, I'll buy you Jack in the Box. And that's literally all he told me. And I remember that day I was just like crushed. I was crushed that, like, the one time that I do ask for help that I haven't been doing, this person doesn't help me, and all he wants to give me is Jack in the Box.
To
And
keep you quiet, like, just
yeah, to
terrible.
just keep quiet because he told me that he didn't want to lose his job or whatever. And
Mm.
I remember that day, like, I really, really questioned life. Like I really, for full transparency, like, I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't see a point of it. And I had suicidal thoughts, and for full transparency, like, I didn't feel like there was a purpose in my life. I
Mm.
didn't feel like I could do anything, be anything, because I'm struggling, with English and stuff. I was good at math. Like, I was struggling with that. I was struggling with making friends and trusting people because the people that said they were my friends, they also hurt me that day. So I couldn't. Who do I trust? Who do I go for? And at home, like, I would just like hide like, my happiest time was when I got home because, like, that's when I would at least see my older brother and my mom before she went to work and stuff. But like, I told nobody, and that actually ended up impacting my life a lot. um so fast forward, in eighth grade I was still getting bullied, but in eighth grade I ended up passing the English, the English learning thing. So that was a positive. But um I remember that I was still getting bullied, and I think that for me, like, I reached a point in eighth grade where I didn't have suicidal thoughts, but like, I had this idea. I was like, you know what? Like, if these people are, if I can't beat them, I'll join them and I'll be like them. So
Mm.
what I ended up doing was I ended up, just hanging out with them and
Yeah.
doing bad things, and just doing all these different things. And I remember that, like, I ended up, making a mistake that later impacted my life,
Mm.
even as an undocumented person. And um for me, I remember the day when my mom came to school because I had got in trouble, and all I see is my mom cry. And for me at that moment, that was my way out. I thought that was my way out of this bullying. I felt like if I were to join these people, they won't mistreat me no more. They won't do this. But when I got in trouble with the school and my mom came to pick me up and she was just like crying, that broke me. That really, really broke me because I started thinking to myself, I was like, my mom and dad work their ass off. My mom was there when I was in the hospital in Mexico. My mom was there when she would tell me I wouldn't wake up in Mexico. What am I doing? And that really got to me. And I remember that I was like, if I'm gonna make my mom cry, I'm gonna make my mom cry of joy. And ever since then, that's always been my mission. Like, that's been like my motivator of like, hey, you know what? Like, um, that's what I'm seeking. That's what I want to do. And I lost her trust for a while, during eighth
Right.
grade because I got in
It
trouble.
takes time. Yeah, it takes time to build that trust again. But yeah.
Yeah, and then in ninth grade, in high school, I was still kind of like a rebellious kid. I wasn't. I mean, I was never like a bad kid. I was just rebellious. I didn't listen to what people
Well,
would tell me, and yeah.
and you were also trying to adapt to this whole new system, right? This whole
Mhm.
new country, and sometimes when we're trying to adapt, we take the route that's maybe not the best route for us, but is the one that will help us feel like we belong, right? And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing, is that sense of I don't fit in here because of the way
Mhm.
I look, the way I sound, and in a way you were trying to, yeah, feel like you could identify with something. And it is really interesting to hear how much of an impact your mom had in your life when you kind of touch that rock bottom, that they say, like you really need to get to that point where you're like, what
Yeah.
am I doing with my life?
Yeah, and even like I tell you, like even in ninth grade, I was still a bad kid. Like I mean, not a bad kid, but I was rebellious.
Yeah.
Like I was still goof around in class, but what really changed my life was one of my teachers in English. He was my English teacher, and it was in my English teacher the subject that I struggle with, right? Like it was interesting, but I remember she stopped me one time after school and she was like, Maya, like you're a really smart kid, but if you continue to hang out with people that are not going to help you in the long term, it's going to be hard for you to succeed. And when she said that to me, like it spoke to me. Like I had never had because I never like based on the last experience with a different teacher, like I didn't have somebody that told me, hey, I believe in you, just make better decisions.
Mm.
And that's when it really changed for me. Like I mean, I just did better. I stopped hanging out with the wrong people, and I started, doing things that I enjoyed and getting better grades. And then I made it my goal that I was going to get into UCLA in the next 4 years. Like that was my goal. I was like, you know what? Like, and I do want to put this in mind that like, I didn't know I was undocumented until 11th grade. Like it never clicked to me that
Yeah,
this was
thank you
who
for
I
sharing.
was. Yeah,
Mhm.
I didn't know. So like, I think for me, I never had this in ninth grade. I didn't have like, oh, I'm not gonna go to college because of this. Because I didn't know.
Was
And
it something, before you share that, I want to know, like, was that something maybe because of the term, like the term undocumented? I have an interview other undocumented that they said that it was always a conversation at home, the not having papers. And then when they wanted to go to college, it kind of hit them. But it sounds like for you, it wasn't a thing you were hearing at home as a concern. Mm.
right, because like I mentioned, I didn't see my parents a lot.
Yeah.
When I would see them, it would be like, like some quick stuff before they went to work or they came from work, they'd be tired. So like it wasn't something I heard. But even, you know, even, but it was also because of the climate of the environment and everything that was going on. Like it wasn't as outspoken as it is today.
Makes
So
sense.
like I didn't hear about it. But I mean, I still struggled in high school. Like I remember I took AP English in my second year, and I was gonna fail that class. Like I was gonna fail AP English
Oh.
because well, for one, I've never been somebody to like, you tell me to read this book and then write about it. Like I was never good at that. I was never like the best person that I'll read it, then I'll analyze, I'll write about it. But I really needed to do that for this class. But I also, because of my experiences and resiliency, like I've always embodied that. And I remember that one time my English teacher, my AP English teacher told me, Maya, like you need to stay after school, you need to try harder, like you're gonna fail my class. You have like a paper to write. And I remember I had no idea how to write that paper. Like I always struggled with grammar, structure, and all these different things. And but I put in the work. I remember that like I wasn't gonna give up. I remember that what I ended up doing that year was I went to office hours every day. I talked to my teacher every day. And what was interesting that I found out about myself at that time was that, man, I can do it. Like at the end of the semester, I got a really good grade, but I also got the highest grade in my in the final English assignment for that class out of everybody. And I was like, man, if I could do this, I could do anything. Like, man, like I could do this.
Of course,
But
like it takes that dedication, that extra work, that extra hours. Like, of course, it's not gonna be easy, right? But
yeah,
seeing yourself accomplishing that, huge.
yeah. So that was like a win that I just needed at that time. And then in my third year, that's when I was gonna apply to college, and I actually got into so before I applied college, I got into this leadership program in LA. And this leadership program, essentially your teachers recommend you because they see a leader in you and stuff. And I joined it. But this is where I found out that I was undocumented, like I was an immigrant. Like I remember that that summer, because of their partners or their sponsors, that organization pairs up with different nonprofits to provide, paid internships for the summer. And I remember that they're like, okay, like do you just fill out this, W-2, fill out this thing with your social security number. And I
Mhm.
was like, and they're like, and with your work permit. And I was like, I don't think I have that. I don't think I have this.
Right.
let me
Just
let
a
me
little detail. Right.
yeah. And I remember that, like, I remember I go home and like I asked my mom, and she's like, no, you don't have that. Like, and I was like, oh no, I can't get this. Um,
Right.
but I mean, thankfully, I still ended up getting an internship, and I got paid through a stipend, like a scholarship.
Yeah.
And even then, like I really liked that experience because I got to talk to day laborers. So like, within my community,
Right.
and I got to help them with English, with something that I had struggled with. Um,
And
then in this internship,
huge.
I'm here teaching these day laborers how to advocate for themselves, for their pay, and just to negotiate, because they're not English speakers primarily. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot. Just, I got a lot of wisdom, and I got a lot of fulfillment for that type of internship that I did. And I remember that, like I built a great relationship with them. And I mean, it was my first time, like, like taking the bus elsewhere by myself, and like, just figuring
Amazing.
out that whole process. And it wasn't close by where I lived, but I took two buses, and I was like, I'll figure it out somehow. I mean, I figured out English, so I could figure this out somehow. And,
It's so like what you're
and
sharing inspires so much because the things that you struggle the most with became the things that you're using
yeah,
right now to help others. And that's just like how wonderful, right? Like it doesn't mean that things have to be easy for us in order to share what we did, right? Like you don't need to be an expert at the moment to extend your hand and say, hey, I'm here for you. I already went through that. Let me help you. And I think this goes really well to what we want to talk about, which is the work that you're doing. And what better context that talking about what being undocumented can mean when you're trying to find a job. And I would love for you
right.
to describe what are the challenges. I think a lot of people, even immigrants that might be listening, might not know that there's certain barriers, right? Or that when you're undocumented, you can't do certain things. So why don't you tell us a little bit what are those struggles, and then we can talk about the work that you do.
Yeah, totally. So so this goes perfectly with when I went to UCLA. So when I went to UCLA, I lived there, but I actually took out $8,000 worth of loans to live there. But I felt like that
And wait a
was
second, were you able to go to UCLA through that scholarship program that you were talking about, through that internship?
no. That
Okay.
was something that was something that was like temporary for that summer.
Okay, got
And then I mean I applied and thankfully I got into UCLA. But so moving fast forward into UCLA, this was like in 2017. I It was like a new experience. I knew I wanted to get there, but the interesting part that a lot of people don't know is that like I actually got rejected to a lot of the universities that I applied to. So I got rejected to UC Santa Barbara. I got rejected to I got waitlisted to UC Santa Cruz, which I thought was easier to get into, and I thought I was gonna go there. I think I got rejected. No, yeah, those are like the main two that I thought I was gonna get accepted to in UCLA. But I mean, I got into UCLA, but not those two, which was interesting.
It's
Which was
interesting because
interesting.
for what I know, getting into UCLA is way harder. There's
Yeah,
more competition than. So you were ready for that one.
yeah. So when I got to UCLA, again, I go back to struggling, and I don't think that's why I say like it always just sort of follows me, and I think that it follows a lot of us being undocumented, being an immigrant, right, coming from a different country. I Not only did I have to take $8,000 worth of loans, which is a lot of money. um, I I mean, so on the positive side of things, I did have a meal plan my first year, and on the topic of working, I didn't have that luxury to say I'm gonna go get work study, or I'm gonna go work at Chipotle, or I'm gonna work at these different places, because I didn't have a social, I didn't have a work permit. So what I did before I even got into UCLA was I went to go work as a day laborer with my dad. So what I
Okay.
would do, so that's how I went around it. But it was not, I would tell you, like, it was not an easy task the way that I envisioned it. I thought it was just like, oh, we're gonna do one job for like an hour and then we're gonna come back. But no, like it was, well, for one, it was not very stable. For two, it was very vigorous work.
Mm.
And for threes, there were some days where we would spend from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and not get any sort of job that whole day, and just be there in the sun and like not get anything. So, but there were some days where we would get paid really good, and we would work around like the area of Van Nuys, around that area, and for the rich communities pretty much, and some of the work that we would do would be like demolition, howling, picking up trash manually, moving different things from one place to another. But that experience in itself, because it was difficult, it made me see life in a different way. So like I remember there was this one time where it was like a 20-story building, and we had to pick up trash through the stairs from the top to the bottom to where my dad's truck was. And man, I tell you that like so many times I wanted to not go no more, but I knew that I needed money if I was gonna live over there to just sustain myself and my meal plan and stuff. And um
Yeah.
but I did it. I remember another time where we had to pick up this wooden log that was like pretty big, me and my dad, up a hill, up a muddy hill. And I remember that day I messed up my back. Like I really, like, I messed it up. Like after that day, like my back started hurting. I couldn't sit straight. But it was rough. Like we had to hold it bare hands, no gloves, just bare hands, and then just pick it up. And I was luckily I was the one at the bottom. I can only imagine. I mean, I was the one at the top, and I can only imagine what my dad
They
was
were
feeling.
pushing. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were pushing up, and those are like two of the main ones. It was also during the summertime, so it was difficult because some of the trash that we would pick up would have a lot of like metal, and you know how metal is with the heat, it gets really really hot, and we would put like this metal on top of our, you know how like we carry stuff like this,
Yes.
and I tell you, that thing will
Oh.
burn sometimes, and all these different things would have like needles, and
Or
Um,
like, yeah, I also think like when you're describing this, like there's that definitely that physical part, right? Like you can't say no. You're there, you're gonna do the job. But then there's all of the other factors, which I think you mentioned at the beginning, which is like how much are we gonna get paid? What are the benefits? Zero benefit, right? Like there's like no protection to these day workers, which is
mhm.
terrible because we're still hiring them, but it's like, what's their protection, right?
Right, right. No, yeah, and the environments were not healthy at all. Like there was, we would wear masks and stuff, but like demolition. There's a lot of chemicals when you demolish things, and all these different things.
Mm.
And just speaking about like how much we're gonna get paid, right? There was some days that we would get paid for X amount of hours, but it's not like a typical job where like it's secure. Where if you do a little bit more hours, you get paid more. It was
Or
more
if
like
you do a little
most,
less.
yeah, most of the time, even my dad, like sometimes he struggled to negotiate with these people because they would be like, nah, we agreed on this price and now you're charging more. But like I'm telling you, those people will not understand like what it takes to be there. Like unless you're there, like you'll understand. But like if you've never been in that situation, it's
Mhm.
very difficult to put yourself in those shoes. And I got stereotyped a lot. Like I remember like these white people over there, they would look at me and they would always tell my dad like, is this your kid from Mexico that doesn't speak English? And but I was never outspoken about anything. I never said anything because sometimes it would help us in our favor. Sometimes they'll give us tips. They'll be like, "Oh, this is for your kid." So like it was also, well, part of it was, yeah, it was stereotypical, dehumanizing, but on the other side of it, like it was also sometimes it was just a strategy for us to even just get some extra $10, extra $20.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean,
You
yeah, I
you
mean,
have to work around those things. Like you need to. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, but like I said, there was some times where they didn't want to pay us. There was some times where they would tell us that like, oh yeah, like it's gonna be easy once we move from this house to the other house because the other house has an elevator. And sometimes they lied to us. Like sometimes there would be more stairs. Sometimes it would be 2, 3 floors up when that they initially mentioned. And
Hmm.
if we did anything, like if we damaged their stuff, sometimes they wouldn't want to pay us. But when you think about it, like it was a lot of stairs. There was a lot of stuff they would want us to carry,
Right.
and
And
it
and it,
wasn't.
it, it makes sense that you set a price at the beginning, but it makes sense that sometimes you have to change that price after you see the conditions or after you find an issue that you weren't planning on. So it's also that, yeah, you don't have a paper or document that says, this is the amount, but hey, it can go up
Yeah,
to this depending on, you know what I mean? Like, because you got to
yeah,
be fair to.
yeah, I agree. And I think that even just like the mentality, like right there, I guess I learned from it because I remember sometimes, you know, we wanted to take a break, but my dad was like, "Now we gotta finish this before we go get lunch, or we gotta finish this before we go home." And sometimes we'd be there, not eat until like 7 p.m. We'll be there since the morning and like just work
Oh,
until then, and then either go eat and then go home, or. And so,
so that changed your perspective, right? As you were saying.
well, it changed my perspective on how I view the stuff that I had. Like it made me more grateful. It made me more cherish the stuff that I had today. The roof over my head, my family, my shoes, little things like that that really made me see life differently because I knew how much my dad had to work. Because I went through that experience, I knew how much he had to work, way more than before I even want to go work with him, like just to give us what we had at that time. And but that's what I did the summer before
UCLA.
UCLA. And my first year, I actually had a conflict with my roommate because so my roommate was a white roommate, and we didn't really get along, and we had conflicts because I guess well, I guess for him, he thought that we were in a position where we could like play around and like how like when you have close friends and you could just like tell them something, they won't get offended, and
Hmm.
we would just have little conflicts like that. He would also like when I went to UCLA, I knew my goal was to get my degree and I knew my goal was to study, so I was always in my room, and he would bring his girlfriend over, and I guess he didn't like that, but like, it's my room, like, it's also my
Right.
room. So I was
Yeah,
gonna
like
stay
those
there.
boundaries, right? Like
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. So but yeah, I mean, I lived there for that year. Then my second year was actually different, because my second year, this time I didn't work with my dad, um, because I started taking summer classes.
Mm.
So I took summer classes, but my second year, this is where it starts getting, I guess, bad. But my second year, I fell under academic probation at UCLA, because, again, for one, summer courses. So I didn't take a break before. I didn't take a break in the summer, just taking courses. For two, like, I did really bad in my grades, and I remember at that time I was trying to pursue materials engineering,
Mhm.
to switch into the engineering school, but it didn't work out because I thought that that's what I wanted to do, and I thought that by working harder I would get there. But yeah, I mean, that didn't work out because I was under academic probation, and on top of it, because I didn't work with my dad, I didn't have enough. Like, I didn't have extra money on top of the loan that I had already taken out to get 14 meals a week, through my meal plan. So I ended up getting an even cheaper meal plan that would only give me 11 meals a week living at UCLA. So
Right.
I was dealing with all these different things. I was getting 11 meals a week, and I think that, I mean, that's just not healthy. When you're
Right.
not eating twice a day. There were some days I wouldn't eat, but the way
And you
that
can't think you can, yeah, you can have the disposition to study, right?
yeah, and yeah, sometimes I would go to just free events where there would be free food, and just like go to events on campus and like get free food, because I mean, I'm gonna eat somehow. I gotta eat. I gotta find a way.
Right. Right.
But yeah, that was the first time where I started. So I went through a mental health problem, and I remember my mental health got really bad, and I went to go see a therapist. And I remember that when I spoke to this therapist, I broke down, like, about my whole story, about what I just mentioned to you,
Yeah.
and 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 believe me, if I would have told you this story maybe like a couple years ago, I would have probably been like more, sad about it. But now, I mean, I've grown, and like, it's different now. But when I told this story to this therapist, she was like, "You need help. Like, we're here to help you. Like, everything you've been through." And she even diagnosed me with clinical depression, that I was clinically depressed because of my past and because of what I was going
The
through.
trauma. Yeah.
And I was like, man, I never thought about it like that. And it was interesting because I also wasn't sleeping a lot. I would so because I knew that I wanted to get over academic probation, I would go to sleep at 12 a.m., and I would wake up at 4 a.m., and I would repeat it every single day. And I would, and put that with mental health, put
Yeah.
that with not eating much. Like, it was difficult. It was totally
Definitely.
difficult. Um, and I remember that the following summer, I needed to find a way to pay another one of my summer courses, because I had already dropped classes. And for full transparency, my first year, I failed econ twice. I failed economics twice. Um, so I didn't have the funds this time, and I needed to find funds. Like, how am I gonna get funds? How am I gonna make money? And I knew that I didn't want to go work with my dad again because of, all these
That
different
was,
things,
yeah.
and it was just rough. And so what I ended up doing was I went to this program called Startup UCLA at UCLA, and I
Okay.
went to them, and I told them, hey, listen, like, I really just want to make some money. How can I make some money? I think for me, I always knew that I wanted to work for myself. I just didn't know what that was. I didn't know what it was, entrepreneurship. And I remember going up to this person, and this consultant, and she ended up telling me, like, you're really good at photography, but you should start charging people for it. You should start just, taking photos on campus of people graduate, people get headshots. You should start charging.
Right.
But I didn't have the confidence back then. I didn't have the confidence to say, hey, I'm good. I'm good at this. I know how to do this. Um, and this is what surprised me the most. A month later, she sends me an email telling me, hey, like, we're looking for an event photographer for this entrepreneurship student event. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh, okay. Like, yes, like, why
Yes.
not? Like, like, why wouldn't I be interested? Like, I need this money to pay for one of my classes, and on top of, like, the meal plan and stuff. Um, and I remember she tells me, how much would you charge me for this? And I was like, I don't know this person, like, fully. This person doesn't know me either. I have never done an event photography event ever in my life. And I was like, man, what do I do? And I knew that like, I was like, okay, I at least want $200. $200. I'm gonna tell her, you know what, screw it. Let's see if she gives it to me. But then I thought about it and I looked it up. And I go on Google and I put how much does an event photographer charge?
Oh my
And I
goodness.
see, and I see that these people charge $1,000 to like $3,000. But again, I didn't think I was at that level to like, charge that much.
Right.
So I was like, you know what? I want 200, but you know what? I'm gonna ask for a little more and see if she says no to that, then I'm gonna bring it down to 200 because that's initially what I wanted.
Right.
I ended up telling her, can you do $600? And
Perfect.
and that was a big, like, it was just bold of me because like I'd never been. I was like, you know what, screw it.
I'm so glad you did that. What did you
and
say?
and I ended up telling her, and she's like, okay. And I was like, what? Like, really? Like, and I got so happy. Like, I got really happy. I just sort of like, I don't know. I looked her out. I was just happy, and it was interesting because up to that point, I didn't know there was a way out of this. I didn't know like what else could I do besides day laboring with my dad. And
Right, because you were still in that position where the work permit was an issue, right? So you were
right,
trying to find jobs that you could do, yeah,
right.
kind of like in an informal way.
Yeah, and I didn't know like freelancing. I didn't know like entrepreneurship. I didn't know that,
Right.
I didn't know that I could get a scholarship through UCLA. She could give me a scholarship through UCLA, and it would go to as a refund.
Right.
And I was like, okay. So I did that, and then 2 months later, she did it again with another event. But the most
Wow.
interesting part about besides just making money off of like something so simple as photography, like I learned a lot from these kids in these
Mm.
events because these were entrepreneurship kids that were interested in the startup scene, and I
Mm.
was seeing these kids like come together. Never people like me. I will say that never people like me, but like people from
Mm.
the other side, the middle class, the upper middle class, and I'll
Yeah.
see these kids come together, have an idea, pitch it, solve it, work as a team, and then pitch it. And because I took photos of that event, so I was just learning, absorbing as much as I could.
Right.
And I knew that I was like, why can't I do that? Like, what do they have that I can't do? Um, and I was like, okay, like I don't have a work permit, but like, can I do something with this? And the beauty about it is that entrepreneurship has no requirements. It has no degree. It has no, you could do it with an I-10 number. And
Yeah.
I remember just like going on Google, being curious, and starting to do that. And I remember I told the lady that had sort of hired me for this event. I told her, "Can I pitch something? Like I have an idea. Can I pitch it?" I remember her telling me, "Nah, you can't do that." So I was like, "Okay."
But you tried it, like the
But
fact that you
yeah,
were already kind of getting out of your, yeah, like that sense of no, it's not for me, right? You broke that and you were like, I can do it too.
yeah. And I remember she told me no, and then and trust me, I was really nervous when it was the day of just going and go take you know event photography of this whole event because I had never done that,
Right.
and it was scary. Like I had anxiety, and like I tell you, I have mental health issues, so sometimes like the anxiety kicks in, and
Totally.
but I'm like, you know what? Let's just go for 5 minutes. If I don't feel good, I'll go to the restroom,
I
make
did.
something, and I'll just go. But sometimes the hardest part is just going and showing up. And I remember that like once I start taking photos and I start doing this, and 5 minutes turns into 6, and then 6 minutes turns into 30, and then we just build that
Yeah.
momentum, and I build that confidence. And obviously I read a little bit about like what to ask. I had never asked for a shot list ever in my life, but I looked it
Right.
up, like, and I remember I asked the person. I was like, what, can you give me a shot list? And I mean, I didn't even know what that was, but like I was learning as I went. And I did it twice, and I learned a lot. And then my third year I actually took initiative, and I was like, okay, entrepreneurs solve problems to stuff. So I was like, okay, this year I'm gonna start something. I don't know what it is, but I'll start something. And I had ideas, and I guess like I mean, it was a bad idea, but not thinking about it, but like my idea was I went on LinkedIn, and I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I would see UCLA students with really bad profile pictures. And I was like, okay, I'm good at photography. Let me see
Right.
if I can help these people out. So what I ended up doing was I was like, I built this free. I mean, I never registered it, so it was like a freelance type of thing. But
Yeah.
I called this headshots on the go. Like I was gonna help you look more professional on LinkedIn, and I started
Yeah.
reading stuff, and I was like,
That's such a good idea.
we'll get there. But yeah, I did that. And I remember that like I had no experience in marketing. I had nothing. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to make a website. Nothing.
Right.
But I knew how to take photos, and that was a start. I was like, I know how to take photos. That's a start. So what I
Exactly.
ended up doing was, okay, let me test it somehow, and let me see if people are interested. So I created a flyer, and I said, hey everybody, I'm gonna be offering free headshots at UCLA at this specific location. Sign up, and if you want a free headshot. And yeah, I got like 10 people signing up, and it was for
That's
free. And I went, and believe me, the first photos were really bad. But that's how we start, right? Like that's how we start.
that's
When
how
you
you
start, you
start.
try. And
Exactly.
when I remember just talking to these people again, I was really nervous of just talking to strangers I never met, but just like taking photos and stuff. And I just got to learn about them. And I was like, this is nice. I get to talk to people, and I got to, help them out with something in their life. And
Yeah.
I like that. And I was like, okay, let me test the people would actually pay me for this. So what I ended up doing, maybe like 2 weeks later, I was like, okay, guys, like I'm doing these headshots for $15. If you want them, like
Great.
book them with me. And so I made another flyer, and I got like one or two people. And then I was like, okay, this isn't working. Let me try to do some Facebook ads. No idea on how to do Facebook ads. So I did a Facebook ad, and I ended up, I mean, I paid $15. So, and I ended up making $15 because I ended up, somebody ended up booking me through that from
Yeah.
someone from Cal State Northridge. So some kid at Cal State Northridge saw my ad somehow, and we
And
set up
but
a time.
and I think that's the beauty of starting in that journey of being
Yeah,
an entrepreneur, right? Like you're gonna make those mistakes at the beginning. For the ones that are maybe listening right now and they're scared about taking that first
yeah,
step, that's the only way to learn. It's really charging the first one, seeing that you didn't make any money, and then continuing. And I really want to hear like how are you, because we have been able to learn that process you had in that
yeah.
journey, how are you helping undocumented folks at the moment with your idea and with your organization?
Yeah. So yeah, this is perfect. So I'm still a UCLA student, and this idea actually came this year. But
Right.
I knew that. Okay, so I knew that at UCLA I always struggle to find opportunities because of my status. I knew that because I went through it. But this year specifically was like I don't know, I guess the finale of like everything that like really came into fruition. Given that I had done professional headshots, I knew I wanted to help
Yeah.
somebody in their professional journey.
Mm-hmm.
But it was actually the hardest time of my life too. And
Wow.
that never goes away. That never goes away. But this year, at beginning of January, my family and I got COVID. I was under subject to dismissal, UCLA. So I
You
needed
were
to
under what? Can you repeat that again?
subject to dismissal. So meaning that like if I didn't perform, I would have been kicked out of UCLA. Uh,
Okay.
so that was those two things.
Whoa.
I kid you not, like because of those two things, I had major anxiety attacks for the full month of January and a little bit of February. And the way that I could describe those attacks were I would wake up every single morning. And you know how like when before you're about to go into a roller coaster, you get the stomach feeling? I had that every single morning. And sometimes I couldn't control it. Sometimes I was just like all over the place. But combine that with COVID, and combine that with being subject to dismissal, and combine that with being a STEM major, I was I didn't know if I was gonna continue, honestly. I didn't know if I was gonna get over this, honestly. And this was the very first time where like it was only me against me, and nobody else believed in me. Like my parents told me to drop out because I was constantly crying. I was constantly feeling bad, and another thing, like I was under the pressure to perform for my classes, and they were all STEM courses. Like they weren't just like, regular classes where I just read and I do it, but they were
That's
STEM courses.
cool. Yeah.
And I was taking upper division mathematics, and it was just a lot because it was like the schedule for these classes are like, okay, the first week or two you do homework, and then it's just test after that. Like it's just pure test. So everything was against me, and I remember that like it was very difficult to even go to class, and this was during the COVID time. But so I go to class. I tell the professors. Keep in mind, I never asked for help, but like this time I did because I felt like, okay, I have to. I just have to. I
Yeah.
went to professors. I went to my counselors. I went to my therapist for
Great.
help,
Great.
and thankfully, I overcame all of those struggles. Thankfully, over time, I mean, I had a friend that helped me out, got to know her. I ended up taking medication for my depression, so that also helped me. And I was taking medication for the COVID symptoms and stuff because I had no sense of taste, no sense of smell. And my whole family also had it. So it was difficult because even with my dad, his job is a liability for him. So him not working, how are we gonna pay rent? So like all of those things combined were pretty much designed for me to just give up. And I thought about it so many times. And my older brother told me drop out. My family told me drop out. My mom, my dad, everybody told me. My
Okay.
closest friends told me, drop out. My counselors told me, okay, take a break. Even my department people were telling me take a break. Are you sure you want are you sure you want to continue this quarter? You don't want to take it off. But I was sure. I was like, you know what? Like, I just give it my whatever happens, happens, right? And I ended up getting the best grades I've ever gotten, actually. So I
Really?
got the best
So
grades
you
I've ever
work under
gotten.
pressure.
Yeah, and but what I learned from that experience was like it doesn't matter if your family doesn't believe in you. It doesn't matter who believes in you or who doesn't. As long as you believe in yourself and you know what you want. Because I knew that I made a promise to myself that I was going to graduate from UCLA with a STEM degree. It doesn't matter what it will be. I don't care if it's environmental science, but I'm going to graduate. And it doesn't matter whether it's in 4 years, 5 years, or 6 years. I will graduate from there. Whether it's with there's this great quote that says, if you cannot run, walk. If you cannot walk, crawl. If you can't, and I'm like, you know what? That's right. Like, it doesn't matter no more. Like, as long as I get this degree, I kept the promise to myself. Not doing this for, I mean, obviously, family is a big motivation, but I proved to myself that I can do it. And if I can go through all that and I could go through that in my life, I can overcome pretty much anything.
Yes,
And
you
so,
can.
so once I overcame all this, I went to a career fair. I
Okay.
went to a career fair. I'd never been to a career fair. None of my friends that are undocumented go to career fairs because they're like, oh, nah, they're not gonna hire me, whatever. They
What's the
never go.
point? Yeah, yeah,
So I went,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and it was a startup career fair, and I ended up going, but I went to just network. But what surprised me the most, and I talk about this, and I write it everywhere. What surprised me the most was I ended up getting a paid growth hacking internship by a startup that wanted me to join their team, and that surprised me because I was like, I just got an offer, but I really just wanted to talk to them and these people, like what's going on? Like, okay, but we do not know how to hire an undocumented student. How can we do that? Who can we talk to? And I was like, okay, talk to the undocumented student program at UCLA. They ended up setting up a meeting, and unfortunately, I didn't get the position. But what that experience taught me was there's people out there wanting to help us, and there's people that see our talent and our skill. It's just there's nothing that connects both of us, and there's nothing that we can go to
Mm,
that helps with this process. So I ended up thinking, and I go online and I go on Google, and I'm like, is there something that can help me find a job as an undocumented person? Couldn't
right.
find it. I would
There's
see all
nothing.
yeah, I couldn't find it. I was like, okay, there's Immigrants Rising, there's
Yeah.
all these different podcasts, all these different people, but nothing focuses on jobs. I'm like,
Mm.
why? And I
We
ended up
need to work. Like that's the thing we
yeah,
need.
and I'm like, what am I
Yeah.
gonna do after I graduate? Like what
Yeah.
am I gonna do? And yeah, I began getting this idea, and I started just so I would still attend entrepreneurship events with alumni at UCLA, And I remember I started pitching this to people, like just telling people, oh yeah, I'm trying to build this business about bridging the gap between undocumented students and undocumented students and employers. And
Right.
I kept hearing from these founders that were not immigrants. They're telling me, I would love to give an opportunity to an undocumented student. I just don't know how to do it.
Mm.
I just don't know how to do it. And I don't know if that's legal. I don't know if we could do that. So I was like, okay, I started thinking to myself. I go back and I'm like, okay, so it's a problem on that side. It's a problem for me, but is it a problem for more people? So what I ended up doing was I ended up interviewing 13 of my closest friends that are undocumented at UCLA and
Cute.
some people at Cal State Monterey Bay, some people at community college. I asked them a couple of questions, just really understanding what did they struggle with. And what I realized was we all struggle with the same thing, that like it's very hard for us to network because of the accessibility. We all have to do more than one thing besides go to school. Some of us commute, is not accessible. Um, it's very, imposter syndrome is real when it comes to networking for us.
Yeah.
Most of the time we're working one under the table job or like these different jobs to sustain ourselves. So it's not like there's nothing that helps us. And even in the career center, there's no immigrant career coaches there. There's no immigrant people that have gone through it. And I felt like, you know, the reason why they can't help us is not because of who they are, is because of who they are not. Like they're not undocumented. You know, they can't advise us on something that they've never been
They
through.
don't know
Yeah.
exactly.
So I started thinking and I started, you know, just researching. And then what I found was surprising. I go on Google and I start seeing like I put, so there's the documented people, the dreamers, and I go online and I'm like, you know, do these people also face the same issue? These people can work and stuff. And I look it up. And I put, you know, do employers struggle with hiring dreamers? So I put that
Yeah.
up on Google, and I found so many articles saying that employers are unsure about hiring dreamers, even though they can work.
Yes.
They're
Even
not
though they
sure,
have a permit.
right? They're not sure about sponsorship and all these different things. And I was like, man. But I also found that some companies, like Fortune 500 companies, um, actually do hire documented people. They do hire, and supposedly they're with the cause, but they get way too much credit because there's still a huge percent that are unemployed within that even community. And I was like, okay. And then I started joining Facebook groups, just really understanding more and all these things. And I came up with the solution for it. And given my stuff and given all the books I started reading, and the podcast I started listening to about, I'm not sure if you ever heard the How I Built This podcast, but
Yes. It's a
yeah,
great one.
yeah, so I listened to that podcast. I started listening to that like maybe a year ago. And they talk about these entrepreneurs like that build Airbnb, you know, Tinder, all these stuff.
That's a great recommendation for people listening. Yes.
Yeah. So then, you know, with those strategies and the books I started reading How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And keep in mind, I hate reading. Keep in mind, I hate
You know,
reading.
I'm gonna ask you about reading recommendations because we have a book club. So please share those books that inspire you.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're looking for book recommendations, How to Talk to People, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That's a great book. If you want to just switch your mindset on like how to think bigger than a lot of our communities, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's a good one. If
Yes.
if you wanna really listen to like, so my whole goal was always like, okay, you know what? Like I'm not gonna go for the good. I'm gonna go for the great. Can I become a millionaire? Can I get there? Can I do that? So a big part of all these people what they talk about is change your mindset. So a good one for mindset is it's called The Millionaire Fast Lane. And it's essentially a story about this person that literally this book like changed my life the way that I looked at it. But a good quote from that book was, become a producer, not a consumer. Like instead of consuming content and consuming products, produce it. And ever since then, like that's how I've gotten my opportunities. Like I produce a lot of content, I produce a lot of value, I produce a lot of help, and
Yes.
sometimes opportunities just come to me. But those
Wow.
are like 3 books that I started reading. But
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
yeah, of course.
I will add them in the description so people can check them out and add them to our book club.
Yeah. And then you know, with all that stuff being said, I was like, okay, I'll build a solution. Let me go through the startup round and let me do this. And and then I just asked for help. I asked for help. I told the startup UCLA, and they had a connection with Justino Mora, which he's an undocumented like icon.
Yeah.
And he went to UCLA actually like
Oh,
a few years back. So I ended up connecting with him and I told him my idea. And now he's one of my advisors. So he's advising me on the journey for this startup. And
wow.
then on top of that, one of the people that I ended up pitching this to, he told me, I'll help you. Like, he's like, I've gone through the process. He's like, 30, 32 years old, but he's gone through building two startups from idea to product to pitching to raising funds. And he's like, I can help you and I could advise you. And he's also advising me. Um,
Great.
he's been a
Great.
huge help as well. And then yeah, I was just like, okay, how can I test this? So I ended up testing it, and I think that at first I was too focused on students, but then my advisors were like, that's not scalable, that's not gonna make you money, that's not what you should do. Why don't you try doing a recruiting agency? Why don't you try to figure out something like that? And I was like, okay. And I didn't know anything about it. I started researching, and then there was no recruiting agency for dreamers. There was no recruiting agency for dreamers. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, beautiful. Beautiful. I could be that recruiting, the first and leading recruiting agency for dreamers. And then yeah, I just started pitching it to people. I pitched it to people in my network. I pitched it to some of my friends. I pitched it to Immigrants Rising, Eliana Perez, all these different people. And I made a lot of mistakes. I've made so many mistakes already, like in terms of like how I can advertise it, what I say, what I don't say. Because
Yeah.
when it comes to immigration and that type of topic, is very sensitive and it could get very political really fast.
Very fast.
Um,
I
uh,
identify with you on that. Yeah.
yeah. So, but
So,
through
in which stage are you at right now? Like, where can people connect if they do need to find a job and they're undocumented? Is that possible at the moment? We want to know the secret.
yeah. So, I would definitely say I'm past the idea. I'm more in the testing phase.
Right.
So, if you are looking for a job and if you're an immigrant with work authorization, we actually have one company that already signed our contract, and you should apply if you're in California and LA, and if you want a job, definitely. And the way that we work is, so I'll give it to you how we work in terms of our business model. So
Right.
the way we get paid is B2B. So we target companies and that's how they pay us. But the people that apply through our website,
Mm-hmm.
those are the people that we help out through the recruiting process and help them connect with the employer. So in
Okay.
terms of so besides you applying online, like just applying massively, why not apply to a company? So why not apply through our website where these companies already signed a contract, where I already met with these companies, make sure that their values are in correlation, that make sure that they're okay with immigrants, make sure that their team is diverse, they have certain values.
Mm-hmm.
Why not go there then go on Indeed and go on LinkedIn where these people don't? And our goal is to, by 2035, and I'm telling you right now, by 2035 we want to help 1 million immigrants with work authorization or without work authorization connect with US companies, whether that is through they have DACA, TPS, or
Yeah.
helping them through independent contracting work, or helping them create their own businesses
Yeah.
and connect with other businesses. So we want to help 1 million of those people. And I
That's
mean, but right now, I mean, we're only 7 months in, but we've made a lot of progress. We have 140 people signed up on our website.
that's amazing.
And we haven't done much marketing either. Like we literally, it's just a website up there. Our
You
Instagram.
have the Instagram, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But right now we're pretty much just building our founding team. I have a co-founder. She's helping me out with
Great.
partnerships, partnerships with companies. She's also an immigrant. She has experience with partnerships in the nonprofit sector. So now it's about creating business partnerships.
Mm.
And then I recently brought in a marketing person to help me out with social media marketing content. And then we have 3 fellows that are going to help us out for the next 2 months. So when we are ready to launch in November and really tell the public like, hey, we're officially like doing this, a lot of people sort of come and check it out and stuff. But what we are that first and leading platform where you can find information and resources on how to engage immigrant talent, regardless of status, to the US labor economy. So we're not going to charge for a lot of the stuff. So we're not going to charge for immigrant talent information type of careers, independent contracting stuff. That's going to be free on our website, and also for our employers, because we want to be that place where people, when they're like, oh man, I don't have work authorization, what can I do? Prepare. Or I know Maya, he's
Yeah.
working on this. Like, we want to be that. And the only way we make money is like by presentations or training companies or the
Right.
B2B
Bigger.
recruiting agency. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, yeah.
And it's so huge. Sorry to interrupt you, but like when you're talking about this, I just can't stop talking about how challenging it has been
It
in
is.
my own experience and in the experience of a lot of immigrants in the US to find a job, in the area that you're
Yeah.
specializing in a professional setting. Either if you're an immigrant student with a international student or with a visa,
Mhm.
if you have a work permit that lasts a year, every single company or agency it's always stuck with,
Yeah.
okay, what do we do next? Like, I
Exactly.
get it, you were able to work here. I did like an internship after I graduated, and it
Yeah.
was an OPT, so it was a permit for a year. And then it
Yeah.
was like, okay, now what? So you describing this, it really makes me feel hopeful and excited because you are bringing that change that it's so needed for so many of us. So, congratulations on having that amazing idea to push it, to find the way. And I can't wait until it's live and happening.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a lot of work, and it's definitely a lot of like, I would say, taking risks, but strategically, like making calculated risks, making sure that, we have a legal team. Like, we're also looking for a legal person,
Right.
because a lot of the stuff we need to go through them,
Mm.
and employment laws, and figure out the recruiting. I'm not a recruiter, so I need to constantly be learning about that, because
Right.
if not, how am I gonna? It's like how I said, how are you gonna teach me about immigrants if you're not an immigrant? How am I gonna be a recruiter if I don't
Right.
do it? So
Right.
a lot of it, it's, learning as we go. But I'm in a position where, well, for one, I'm young. I'm 21 years old. For two, I've told people that I have nothing to lose and I have everything to gain. I literally can do this. If I fail, cool, I'll try something else. But if I succeed, the impact that it will make on society for our community is immense, because for one, this is an untapped population that is often neglected. Two, DACA is very niche, but it also has its flaws. Like, with the renewals
Well,
delay, like, that's an issue. And can we create a solution for that with a company through partnership contract? Can we do something like that? Can we solve that problem?
yeah.
But it also takes a whole level of being in places where we've never been before.
Mm.
I see a lot of nonprofits led by immigrants. We're not a nonprofit. We're taking the startup route. We're taking the
Yeah.
venture capitalist route.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
and um and it's not going to be easy, but it's totally worth it. And I know that for me, what motivates me is not so much like, you know it's not so much of like, what we're building. What motivates me is like the impact we can have on a lot of people. And just because I've struggled, and just because you struggled, like, doesn't mean that the next generation has to struggle even if they don't have DACA, because there's just so many things in the world
Mm.
that a lot of us don't know. Like, I bet you don't know this. Maybe you do, and correct me if you do. Do you know what a EB-5 visa is?
UB5. No.
So essentially, you can get a visa if you invest $1 million at a
Oh,
company in the US, and it's profitable, and you employ 10 US citizens. So you can get a visa and a green card if you go that route, or if you're one of the top people in your industry. And
mm,
that's what we're trying to get to. We want to be that first that company at the top of our industry, so we can all get a green card. We can all sort of,
yeah.
no DACA, like, just,
Just
but
having, yeah, that route, like creating different ways. I feel like it's so limited right now for immigrants. So having a place like yours where people can go to and have it easier, it's like solution, right? Like
Right.
it's amazing.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work out, I'll go to Canada.
There
I'll go to
you go.
Canada. I'll become a Canadian over
That's where
there.
we're all gonna go if things don't work out here. But okay, so we sadly we're reaching the end of this amazing interview and this amazing opportunity that I have had with you. But I don't want to leave this interview without asking you
Yeah,
for a message that you want to share to those that are listening that are feeling right now how you felt at the
yeah,
beginning of the year, which wasn't that long ago, or have you feel sometimes? Because I feel like we all go to those up and downs, not seeing a future, saying, you know what, I'm gonna give up, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna
yeah,
leave, I'm gonna quit my studies because I'm not gonna. I know so many friends that did that. They
yeah.
knew like they were not gonna find a job here, so they were like, why am I spending all this money in college
Right.
if I'm not? So what can you tell them to, continue?
Yeah, totally. Well, for one, I think that a lot of people don't struggle with motivation. I think they struggle with clarity. They don't know what they want, so they don't know how to get there. Like if you don't know what you want, you don't know how to get there. I know what I want. I know I want to make this, and I know what I want a month from now with this. I know what I want in November from this. So
Yeah.
first figure out what you want. That's number one. And number two, people can have it all, but if you're willing to go through the sleepless nights, if you're willing to wake up early, I wake up, I'm gonna be honest with you. I promise you I wake up earlier than a lot of people. I wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, I go to sleep at 8:30, and I repeat that process because I know that okay, I might not have papers, I might not have work authorization, I might not have XYZ, I might struggle to learn a lot of things, but what I do have is time. I have time and I have the why. Like I know what I know why I'm doing this for. And I think that that's what has kept me going. That's what keeps me like, hey, you know what? Like I can do this. And I'll tell you that if you just push a little longer, it gets better. I promise. Like it really does. It really does. You can quit today, you can quit and all the pain's gonna go away. But if you just push a little harder and you work harder than a lot of more people, I promise you that like me and you could be doing the same thing. But if I wake up at 3, you know how big that gap is gonna be between you and that other person that are doing the same thing. Like I
Huge.
got all these things from I listen. So have a morning routine. Morning routines are very important. So like my morning routine is important. So I wake up, I pray. I ask God, God, just help me out, help me get to this spot. And then I go to the gym. I go to the gym, but on my way to the gym, I listen to like, Mark Cuban. I listen to Kevin O'Reilly. I listen to David Goggins. I listen to Eric Thomas. I listen to all these different people
Mm.
on how they've been successful, and they always talk about one thing, outworking everybody. And I think that if I can just do that and I could do it consistently, this will happen. And
Yeah.
everybody can do it, but not everybody can. And I'm not telling people to change their ideas. I'm just saying that that is just one thing that everybody does have. We all have 24 hours in the day. It's just a matter of what do you do with your time and what do you want, and ask for what you want as well. If you never ask, you'll never get it. And I think that for me, I'd rather live with, it didn't work out. I asked, it didn't work out, than living with the what if. What if I would have asked, or what if I would
That's
have
the
done this?
worst feeling. Yes.
That's what
That's
I got to say. And just dream higher. Literally, like if you, the reason why I never call what we're building a small business is because it's not a small business. We're not trying to make it a small business. We're trying to make this humongous. Screw
yeah.
it. Like we need more people that are willing to say, man, I'm gonna be a millionaire when I'm 23, 24, or I'm
Yeah.
gonna be a billionaire when I'm 35. But don't do it for that. Do it for the impact that you can make for a lot of people. I just want to be in a position where I'm able to give more and more volume. So I'm able to give scholarships. I'm able to help other immigrant entrepreneurs in the future.
Have an
Be that
impact.
person. So
Hmm.
at the end of the day, like do it for impact. And
Wow.
yeah, you like it, like yeah, you'll continue going
It
like
does
that.
get better. I love that message.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Yeah.
really, it really does keep pushing. Where can people find you if they want to check out your website or your personal account? Yeah, just you can share it right now.
Yeah, totally. So check out our startup. If you're in California and Los Angeles looking for operations manager role, we landed that client. They signed a contract. They're good through us. Definitely apply, and we'll help you throughout the process. So find that at prepareweb.com. That's our startup. We're gonna be launching in November, so I hope that you sign up. So we invite you to our virtual events when we do launch. And then if you want to connect with me, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn as Juan Maya Hernandez, and on Instagram as J Maya Her. I switched my Instagram so many times, but like that's the final one that I'll keep. I'm on TikTok as J Maya Hearn, and then everything else is pretty much my name. And yeah, definitely connect with me. I mean, I'm always willing to connect with more people,
Yeah.
get to know more people and stuff, and if I can help you in any way, or if you can help me, definitely reach out. I think that
Yes.
for me, we're really just looking for companies that are willing to come with us, go through our process, and then become our partner in the future, so we can help more people like us. And yeah, but I guess that's it. I mean, if you follow me on Instagram, I post a lot. I post a lot on LinkedIn, and
Great. Those are
I'll
good
be up.
places
I'll
to
be
be
up.
at.
So yeah, that's where people can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been such a great opportunity. I'm really grateful that we had this time to meet, and I can't wait to keep track of all the stuff that you're doing and in a way for Modern Immigrant to also support your project. I think it's beautiful and I can't wait to see it grow.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to share my story. I mean, I think that I hope that people can just listen to this and get inspired somehow, and to just pursue what they want to pursue, and no matter what's gonna happen. I don't think about what's gonna happen tomorrow. I just live by today, and yes, it's good to have plans, but sometimes you just gotta focus on what's in front of you. And for me, that's this right now. So
This is what
but
we have. Yes.
yeah,
Well, again, thank you. This was great.
yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Bye.